So I'd like to begin today by sharing something that author Tama Keyes shared at the beginning of her monthly e-newsletter back in August of last year. The article was titled, "Tattoo This Question on Your Brain and Watch Everything Change." And she wrote, "Many of us turn to healing or spirituality, we turn it into a rat race or imposition. It's like first you discover some life-changing principle, like you create your reality, you are responsible. It sounds like a party, and you can't wait to tell all your friends how they should change their lives. But then later in the game, you think, hey, wait a second, why did I create this political candidate or friend who doesn't call me back, or shooting pain in my hip? Now I feel like a triple loser. I am conscious. I do create my reality. And still I choose shards and crumbs? Did I really say, sign me up for the broken life? I'll take the cracked vase, please, and oh, the rotten melon, too. Can I have the brochure about the uphill climb that never ends? That sounds like something I'd be interested in. What am I doing wrong?" Those last words are the reason that the title for our lesson today is Asking the Better Question. Asking the better question. Sometimes when we consider doing something better than we are currently doing it, it helps to look at how that current way came to be in the first place. And what we're considering today is the way we ask questions, how we phrase them, what we expect to learn in the form of answers. I did some digging, and I came upon a blog posted on a website that's called wabasabilearning.com. And the site is one where peers can come together and share their insights, their ideas, ask their questions pertaining to their teaching techniques. And then it offers some resources and products and so forth for its members as well. This particular blog provided a bit of history about the practice of asking questions. It noted that for many years, a big part of classroom education was rewarding correct answers and punishing the wrong ones. Learning was fairly linear, quite structured, and having the right answer was considered the measure of successful learning. Now, none of that is wrong. None of it is unimportant. But over time, there's been a shift from being right to being curious. The blog pointed out, as education and the students it teaches have evolved, we've witnessed a shift in emphasis from being right to being curious. We've come to realize that a learner's ability to question meaningfully and think critically is actually more crucial to success in a changing world than simply proclaiming right answers. The truth is, it is preferable to focus on asking the best questions we can. Being right takes a back seat to being thoughtful, being introspective, and seeking important solutions to significant problems. In other words, fix the question, and the answer will follow. Fixing her question was exactly what Tama Keyes decided to do. We're going to take some time now to dig further into that. And in doing so, we're going to shift away from the educational learning that provided us with some historical insights into our learning habits, our asking habits. We're going to shift to the concept of spiritual learning, that inner growth and change and involvement that occurs in that part of our lives, and so much of which begins to occur when we start to ask questions. See, Tama Keyes knew that she needed to make that shift. As she continued sitting with that thought that would not leave her mind, what am I doing wrong? A couple other thoughts made their way in. She was thinking about her own spiritual journey. She was thinking about how she felt she had been holding herself back from all that she was brought here to be, all that she was sent here, to do. And the thought came into her mind, I have caught myself turning a moment of sadness or unfulfilled desire into a full-on manhunt into my psyche, hunting for a weakness to blame. With that realization about herself, she then said, the next thought was, I don't want to know more of what is wrong according to my ego and inner critic. If any of us have ever looked for our weaknesses and applied layer after layer of self-blame upon ourselves, if any of us have ever gotten tired of our human mind telling us everything that we're doing wrong, it's going to be pretty easy to understand Tama when she offers that the wrong questions lead to the wrong answers. Think about that for just a moment. When we are mentally fatigued, do we think clearly? Do we function at our highest of levels? Are we creative and imaginative? Are we able to easily find the answers to our questions? And no is probably the answer for most of us to all of those questions I just asked. Another thing to consider for a moment are the ways we might pose the questions we ask. If we are asking questions of a spiritual nature, or we're just asking questions about any part of our lives, but we want the answer to come forth from that highest and best self of us. Why? Why would we ask that cold, abrasive, critical voice within us how to find peace? How to find happiness or how to find success in whatever form we see success as being. Why would we ask that which makes us feel like we're in a living hell, how we can create a living heaven right here in and through our lives? So a better question that we could ask, one that could just help us begin to move away from 100% reliance upon only our human minds, which are limited. They're wonderful, but they are limited. That question might be, what can I approve about myself instead of trying to improve about myself? What can I try to approve about myself? And not worry so much just yet about improving myself. Because sometimes when we just jump full on over there, improving ourselves every moment of every day, it can get to be overwhelming. Or we might approach those improvements based on ways we have functioned up until this point. I mean, if you're someone like me who has spent a lifetime as a type A personality, right? Love structure, rules, procedures, so forth. How easy do you think it would be to just take that and fit an idea into it that's called follow your bliss? Speaking of myself, it's not going to be easy, but it's not impossible to find your bliss. It means that it may just take you a little bit more time to find a pathway to it that works for you. So instead of just seeking instant change, instant growth, instant evolvement, instant improvement, maybe just begin by seeing all about yourself that you can already approve. Tama points out that many times this approval process begins to take place when we take more time to nurture our inner instincts. That inner intuition, those nudges that are real and true. But not all people can respond on the spot to those things they like about themselves, or the gifts they have to offer, what their purpose in this life is. Sometimes it takes a little bit of self-discovery on our part. But then once we do discover our gifts, our capabilities, our dreams, our desires, our purpose, then we can decide if we'd like to improve upon them or not. And these discoveries, times of self-reflection, they work best, I believe, when we take some time to step away from the world. Just be with God. Whatever that might look like for someone. For many people, it's done through prayer. For others, it might be sitting in nature. Every time I drive by the water, any water around this town, there's someone that's just still lying upon it, floating on it. Maybe doing some Tai Chi, playing a musical instrument. In any and all settings that bring you closer to your spiritual nature. Ways that connect you with a higher power of your beliefs. It is possible to pose the questions of your hearts. It is possible to receive the answers that you seek. There's another website I came upon in preparing this lesson. It's called lifehack.org. And it's a platform that basically helps people to find and then live out their purpose. And I came upon an article. It was short and sweet, barely more than a page long, and it was titled, How to Be Amazingly Good at Asking Questions. And only 4 points were answered. And as I scanned them quickly, it was immediately apparent to me how easily they could be applied to the more inner questions we ask, those spiritual questions that we ask as we go about experiencing our lives. And the first technique, if you will, is that when you form your questions in your hearts, you form your questions in your mind, we say, don't ask yes or no questions. That makes a lot of sense. If you want to nurture your inner instincts, you have got to expand beyond one-word answers. One word is not going to give you a whole lot of information. In our promotions leading up to this service, and specifically about this lesson, I shared about a church who had a weekly process that took them beyond yes or no. It was a church in the Missouri, Kansas area where I was serving one of my internships when I was back in seminary. And I walked into that church for the first time. I walked into the first meeting I was going to have with the staff. And it was a planning meeting for their upcoming Sunday service. But they began their meeting by looking back at the Sunday service they had just offered. And they asked 2 questions. And every person sitting around that table had the opportunity, if they wanted to take it, to answer those questions. And those 2 questions were, what hummed? And what could we do better? Notice what they didn't ask. They didn't ask, what did we do wrong? They asked what hummed. And by that they meant what touched your heart in that service. What maybe brought a smile to your face or a tear to your eye. And then the do-betters. What could we do better? They were things that they could look at improving upon if they wanted to. Can you see the difference in the kind of answers that were given and what they would have been had the question been a yes/no question? See, their questions, they elicited answers based on what, when, how, why, what touched your heart, why did it touch your heart, when in the service did it happen? What didn't go as expected? Why did it happen differently than what we had planned or thought or anticipated? How can we approach it differently this week? I heard such rich discussions of feelings, perspectives, ideas, creativity, some self-blame being applied, honest answers to questions. And I learned so much more as an up-and-coming future minister than I would have if I had only heard. Did you like the service, Dale? Did anything go wrong? No. I wouldn't even have to take notes for that, you know. See, just like them, you and I can learn so much more. Not about planning and offering a church service, but about ourselves, about our lives, and about our questions that we ask the universe in the very same manner. See, this led them, and it can lead us right into technique number 2, which is go deeper. Go deeper. Take that initial answer you feel or hear or discern and take it deeper. Now, maybe that sounds a bit frustrating to some of you. I mean, there you are, you go into prayer, you ask your question, you get what you believe is just a surefire, right on answer from God itself. And here I am saying, well, that's not enough. You got to do more. But here's the thing about that. Isn't it usually the case that when we do receive some initial guidance from God, that there's more lying beneath it, things for us to mine and bring forth and work with and reach understanding about? I'll take you back to seminary again. And I believe I shared this in some earlier prayer chaplain trainings I've offered here in my tenure. I may have even shared it in a lesson in the past, but I think it's worth repeating even if I did. See, one of the earliest classes that we were required to take in seminary, the teacher asked us why we wanted to become ministers. You know, she said, better answer that question now. It's better to find out now than 3 years down the road. So a few folks offered out their answers. And then we were invited into an exercise. We were each given a piece of paper, and we were told to write the question, why do I want to be a minister, across the very top of that page? And then on the first line of that paper, she said, write down number 1, and then write your answer to that question in 1 sentence. So for example, maybe someone looked at the question, why do I want to become a minister? And their answer on line number 1 was because I feel it's my calling. Is it your answer for them in that moment? Good answer? Makes sense? So then the teacher said, okay, read silently to yourself your answer, whatever you wrote on line number 1. Look at it and ask yourself, why is that important? And write your answer to that question in 1 sentence on line number 2. Once we did, she continued, read what you just wrote to yourself. And on line number 3, ask, why is that important? And put your 1 sentence answer on line number 3. So we continued going deeper down the page, like going deeper within ourselves for 15 minutes. For every answer we wrote down, why is that important? Okay, why is that important? Why is that important? And some of us got stuck on line 3 or 4 or 5, and others were still writing when the 15 minutes was up. See, this is an exercise that research has proven to show that it takes on average 13 repetitions of why is that important before we get to the real answer to that question that we wrote way back up here on the very top of the page. And it was amazing to witness right there how that exercise completely changed what one of my classmates had believed her ministerial call to be. And when she started to share that with us, she was glowing. She was so excited. And my gosh, the inspiration the rest of us had to not only put that exercise in our toolboxes and use it going forward, but not just about our ministerial calls, but anything in life. Anything we have an inquiry about and we think we've got a really good answer, take 10 seconds and just ask yourself, why is that important? If you can't figure that out, maybe that's not the answer. Now, the third technique is really one that will probably become a part of the second, and that is use the power of silence. Silence can be very uncomfortable for some. I mean, there are some people who immediately just start talking because they just don't like silence. They'll start filling that space with words. And yet silence is so very powerful. I have seen so many people receive answers to questions they've asked me in counseling when I remained silent for just a moment or two, when I haven't immediately offered my answer to that question. They got it themselves. My words might have blocked that from happening. I've seen people relax into their relationships with God during prayer when I have stopped praying with words and instead prayed by being silent. And that technique will tie us directly to the fourth and final technique for being an amazingly good person at asking questions. And that is, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. I mean, you know how you can hear someone offering their thoughts, and you could hear a lot more about them if you didn't interrupt them in the middle of it, right? It happens. Well, the same thing applies when we're in conversation with Spirit, asking God our questions. If we allow space for silence, a space that isn't filled with words or thoughts running through our head, there is room for words in the form of answers to come to us from God. So use the power of silence to your advantage. Just be with your question. Give spirit some space to work. Tattoo this question on your brain and watch everything change. That question, the one that today's educators said would be more meaningful, the one that they said would guide us to more thoughtfulness and develop skills of deeper introspection and self-reflection, not only in our own lives, but also in our world. The question that Tama chose as the fix to hearing all about what she was doing wrong is simply this: what am I doing right? What am I doing right? The folks at Wabi Learning, they believe that learning is an answer. They said learning is an answer to a need, or to what springs from our curiosity, or from a deep personal, and I'll add, spiritual connection. See, answers come in response to questions. And when asked what a question contains, the Learning Center answered with one word: possibilities. And what do all possibilities that become realities have in common? They all began with one idea. Look around every once in a while. Look around and really look, see what you are looking at, and do that from the perspective of knowing that everything that you can see began with an idea. An idea. So as you consider your own life, as you collectively begin considering the next chapters of this ministry's life, please, oh please do not go back. And please, oh please don't let your inner critics drive the bus. Let all that you've done right take that wheel. And then ask your questions from your highest self. And then believe in the unlimited possibilities of God. And then create a space for all those divine ideas to start taking form in your minds. And keep in mind that the greatest advancements, the greatest achievements and growth and involvement of history and humanity would never have happened had we not questioned things before they happened. God bless you.